Yeah, exactly. No, there won't be.
Okay. So,
it's all good.
Okay, guys, so we're recording. So now we have to look all like we're used to being on the telly, you know?
Okay.
Anyway, so first of all, welcome to my kitchen, which, of course, I'm sure you've all been in before at some point. Well, I know your children have been in it anyway.
Yeah.
And I want to say hello to USA. We're all on a USA bent this week because we're obsessed. And the whole of Ireland wants to have an affair with John King at the moment. We're completely obsessed with John King.
I heard that.
Hilarious. And the funny thing is that we've now discovered that his granny is from Dunlochan, which is this like wild beach in Connemara.
Yeah.
So now we're on the trail of getting John King to Ireland, and we're going to find his granny's cottage. But anyway, so
how has he only been discovered now? Because he's been doing this for some time. And I love John. He does such a great job of the voting count and the board and walking you through. And he doesn't get excitable. He just delivers it steady. Right. So he's been, every 4 years, he's done this for maybe 16, 20 years.
Amazing.
How come now he's only discovered?
I don't know.
I know. And the weird thing, like, we've all become so obsessed because I don't really watch CNN ever. And we have the BBC News, and we have Channel 4, which is probably better than the BBC News, and it's probably the most accurate, I think, anyway. But
is that RTE?
No, it's Channel 4.
No, Channel 4 is UK, the UK news. But now, an RTE, in fairness to them, we would have very good. We have a fabulous girl, Katrina Perry, who was our foreign agent. She was our foreign correspondent in the White House up to about 2 years ago. And she's home now, but she absolutely has such a passion for politics and the whole White House story, But it's only because I think we've all become kind of addicted because we're locked down. And suddenly we've CNN on the telly, and the screen is so perfectly lit and bright, and their teeth are all magnificent. And they're all beautifully groomed, and everybody seems to be so intelligent that we just completely, and they're on 24/7. Anyway, so hello to Chicago, first of all. Enough of my voice.
Well, hello to Ireland. We miss it.
Hello,
we were supposed to go back in April, and obviously because of lockdown, we weren't able to go.
I know, but you will, Kecia, you will. So, I mean, you'll be here.
We booked flights again, so we're...
March.
Yes.
Yep.
And I mean, they're looking at a vaccine now being quite fast, so it looks like that might happen.
Yeah.
So just to introduce you after that long-winded start, Ciaran, obviously I know you, I think probably 50 years.
Forever.
Which is forever. Actually, forever is a much nicer word. And then, of course, you went to Trinity College. After Trinity College, you went to the States in your 20s, and you met your soulmate and fell in love and met and married Kecia. That's
right.
Yes. And I have to say, nauseatingly happy couple, if you don't know the right word. I know when you're
it's okay to be nauseating.
It is, Kecia, because your kids were in my garden, I think 2 years ago for dinner, and they were saying like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. Like they're like honeymooners all the time. I just thought it was hilarious listening to your kids.
They're funny. Yeah, they like to call us out, but you know what? It's given the alternative, they're very happy with everything that we get along so well. So
yeah, no, they totally enjoyed it. Like they were totally enjoying it. And your fun day Sundays, and it was also American.
Oh, we love our Sundays. Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, and also, Kecia, we connect on a regular basis because we're in a WhatsApp group about food and other things like nature and saving the planet. And all
and your crafts.
So, and this week, of course, it is, I certainly wasn't going to talk to the two of you to get into any kind of a dispute over, the Catholics and the Protestants and the orange men and the red men and the blue men and all the rest of it. But Ciaran, Ciaran, I did not know till this week that you were red.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, so I would describe myself as very center, right-leaning. I have voted always. I look, and I don't know, Debbie, if you remember, but, Kevin Murphy would come down in the middle of the night and say, Ciaran, what are you doing up? And we would be in the middle of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and Labour duking it out over something. And I would have to watch. And so I've always listened and looked and considered and then voted. appropriately. But I would say generally, center right, rational, no craziness here.
Oh.
We have voted center left before too.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the ticket. It really does.
So it depends. You see, we're not even that familiar. You Americans, my son Mikey was in New York last year, and he was completely fascinated that watching politics is like a sport for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
You go to the pubs. Like, we don't really do that here. We're kind of, we're still all Fianna Fáil and Fianna Gael, and we're kind of bored to death with the whole lot of them. Whereas I think you guys have completely sexed it up for us now, and we're totally turned on by it. But I do think, Ciaran, I think if you had stayed in Ireland, you might have gone into politics. I think it probably would have been a path that you would have liked.
It could have been, very much so. I wouldn't, that could very much have been, Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie, I noticed like early 90s when we were, I think we were just married maybe at that point, he was getting very opinionated on politics, and he was on a green card. So he had no intention necessarily for getting his citizenship. He didn't need it. But I said to him, it's like, you know what? You have absolutely no say. You can be as opinionated as you want about our government, about our politics, but you have no say. You don't have the right to vote. So
I've been trying to sway her, and she's like, get your own vote.
It doesn't matter, So that's kind of some of the incentive for him to get his citizenship, is just so he would get afforded not just the right to vote, but just the rights of citizenship in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, well, Ciaran, you're obviously a citizen there forever. Like, you're not one of those hoping on the dreamers visas or anything. You're not one of those.
Yeah, you got one of the lottery ones.
Yeah. And tell me this, guys, do you argue in the house about it? Like, because is there arguments over there among yourselves all the time? Because I am right in saying, Ciaran, you're in the, I don't mean to keep saying you're in the red camp. I feel like I'm saying that in a bad way. But Kecia, you were more blue this time, but it depends on who's running. Is that what you're saying? It depends.
It really depends. It really depends who's running. And by red, we are, I would say, liberal Republicans. Or liberal Republicans. Like, we can go and cross the aisle. For example, John McCain was my guy. That's why I registered as a Republican. When he was running for office, I just thought the guy was my hero. He was a patriot. He served this country. He was not so myopic in his views that he wasn't willing to listen to someone else and cross the aisle. And he did. And as a result, I think he would have been a wonderful president. Now, he was running up against Barack Obama one time when I voted for him in the primaries. He didn't win. And then when he did finally make it, it was with the Sarah Palin ticket, and he was running against Obama. So it was just like a really, really hard battle for him to win at that point. And I was disappointed, because I feel like if anyone really deserved a presidency, it was him. And now he's gone. Very sad. Very sad. But Joe Biden is a good friend of his. They used to go out to dinner together.
I actually watched a documentary last night on the whole origin of their friendship.
Yeah.
And it was amazing they were really close. Like, they had picnics in each other's gardens, and their families grew up together, and like, it showed the whole friendship, which, it's funny, even your phrase "across the aisle," I've heard that about 20 times in the last 2 or 3 days. I've never heard it before. Because suddenly I think, well, maybe only because we're all just dipping in from our side now, because it's all so dramatic. I suppose we're hearing the language that you guys are used to. So you're blue and you're reds. There's obviously the aisle, and some people are on one side, and obviously some people are completely on the other.
Some people are always on that aisle, no matter what. Like, they'll vote down the board Republican, down the board Democrat. Doesn't matter who's on the ticket. That's just who they are, and they'll just let the chips fall where they may, even if they don't particularly care for the candidate. And then you get the people that are the swing states. That's why they call them swing states, because you got a lot of independent voters. I would say we're kind of in that mix there, in that we need to be convinced that on our ticket before we can go to the polls and feel confident. We're not just going to vote just because I'm a registered Republican. Doesn't mean I'm always going to vote Republican, and I haven't. And likewise for Ciaran.
Okay. And so, if I bring up the thorny subject, can I ask the question that I'm obviously only seeing it from a completely armchair we're all armchair experts here now. Like we know the headlines, you know, like we read Twitter, we watch the news, we see the clips, and so and we read as many articles as we can from all of the, you know, all the stuff you'd see on the different platforms. So what are the Reds, the Republicans, are many of them ashamed of the behavior all along of Trump? Is there many of them ashamed of his behavior?
Of course.
Yes. Okay.
For example, the darkest moment for me with Donald Trump, the darkest moment for me was John McCain. I'm going right back to him. When he passed away, and even before that, when President Trump wouldn't acknowledge him as a hero or as a patriot, or he wasn't a hero because he got caught. I just found that so offensive.
Yeah.
So offensive. That, like, don't you dare talk about someone who has served this country in the capacity that he has like that. I think he's a hero. I think he's a true patriot. Yeah. And so for me, that was like probably some of the darkest times in terms of what Trump has said. But he's said a lot of silly, immature things. And no, we do not subscribe to that, his maturity at all.
The other night, Ciaran and myself we were texting back and forward, and I was trying to, in fact, I still have to come back to you, Ciaran, on some of the things you said. I decided the other night not to say what I wanted to say in case we were like fighting over text, and there's nothing worse. But
that's hard.
But I definitely have to come back at some of the things you said, only because I'm not informed enough to be able to say, look, you're completely wrong. How would I possibly be informed? We live on an island, like, you know, of Europe.
And you know what, Debbie? I'm not falling out with anyone. There's a lot of people falling out with each other. Oh my gosh,
it's ugly.
I'm not. I love that I'm able to hear someone else's opinion. I respect your opinion, and I take that that's your opinion. And I want to have the same level of engagement for you to hear me.
Yes.
I'll never fall out with you. I'll never fall out with you. That's your view. You're totally entitled to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ciaran, you saw in the north of Ireland, I mean, it took years of negotiations of people. I mean, Bill Clinton came in along with like many other people and sat down around tables to try and get people to talk, just to talk. And really, if you don't talk to people, you know, like last year, I had dinner in the Kremlin with Vladimir Putin, and afterwards people said to me, oh my God, like, how could you possibly, you know, did you bring up this and did you bring up that and did you tell him how, like, I'm sitting beside him having soup, like, you know. So I said, well, actually, you know, guys, like, at the end of the day, I have my views on a million things and he has views on a million things. And it's good to just communicate and actually find some kind of common ground, because then at least if you want to bring up thorny subjects, you know that the person can trust you to do it without stabbing them in the back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can't imagine the households in America where you'd have a wife blue, strongly blue, and a husband red, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Because Trump has been so obnoxious, if you don't mind me saying so. I mean, he's been shocking and appalling, and the nepotism and the family, you know, and I mean, everything. It's not just the McCain comment. You could multiply that by 1,000, Kecia, what we've all witnessed, you know. So what's next, guys?
What stood out to you, Debbie? What stood out to you, the biggest appalling thing that he's done?
The most, just straight off the bat, for me, the shocking thing was, I think I said this to Ciaran the other night, the time we saw him and he was doing the hand movements like from a
special needs
person. That to me was the most, the optically the most shocking thing I ever saw anybody doing. And I suppose we work with special needs children and we're all very conscious of the wording around it, and we're all gone so PC about stuff like that. I was horrified that anybody could do that. You know, of course we were horrified, you know, with like Fauci say I couldn't stand the lock her up business. I thought it was so bullish. I thought when Hillary was in her debate and he was pacing behind her, I found that very threatening. As a man, to walk behind a woman like that, I found it extremely threatening, and so did Hillary afterwards, listening to her. I found the murders and the rape words that he was using around Mexicans and all that, I found that extremely disturbing, and I found it it must have separated, it must have caused so much trouble for so many people. I mean, I'm not sure who put the cages there. He said they were there before he was, when families were separated. So I don't know enough about it to know that, actually. I couldn't blame him for some of the stuff, because I genuinely don't have the details. But his behavior on stage, and then his ramblings, and then his non-scientific bullshit. I mean, we all watched, is it Sarah Cooper? Is that her name? Sarah Cooper?
Sarah Sanders?
She's brilliant. She imitates him. She imitates his voice on TikTok.
Oh, I don't know her.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So she's American, and she's done it. I think she's taken over now one of the Saturday night shows. But that whole business of injecting light here and injecting light there, I mean, you could see doctors behind him like thinking, there's some, like...
Yeah, I cannot even tell you the amount of times that we're just like, oh my gosh, like, I wish he had said it like this, or I wish he had not said that, or he should have rephrased it like this.
And I didn't feel when the George Floyd thing happened and the people came into the city with their guns, I didn't feel he said out loud enough, that's a bad thing. He did code it so that it could have been a good thing. Like he's clever in that you don't get to his level without being clever, but I don't think he's clever enough. I think if he had played a better game, I think he would have got it over the line. But because he was so aggressive and demeaning of women, I mean, I thought a month ago he said something, Kecia, like about housewives and their husbands waiting. I thought it was so funny. Like nowadays, women are
trying to get the suburban housewife vote.
Yeah, I think
if not getting that vote.
He probably could have pulled it off if he had have actually.
If we didn't have COVID.
Yeah.
If we didn't have COVID, Debbie, it would have been a landslide.
Possibly, because the world is watching the numbers. I mean, we're all obsessed. Like, we're all like doctors in our living rooms now. We know how many people died. I heard this morning we've like 4 ventilators left in Ireland not being used. Like, we've all suddenly become armchair doctors, you know. But I don't understand the sycophantic behavior and the arse kissing. I don't understand how intelligent people stand in the Oval Office and how Republicans didn't say at some point enough. That's what I don't understand.
Well, you had some people like Mitt Romney say enough, and he has consistently chased down Trump to say this is not appropriate, this isn't the way you act, you may not, right? And so he's been a thorn in Trump's side.
Yeah, as a result, he's not a fan.
So it's not everybody in the Republican Party who's standing by. It's the leadership, and it's most. But I will also say, you know, we met with the politician. We had a conversation with someone who was running locally, and she was running on the conservative ticket, on the Republican ticket, and she said, you know, it's not I'm not necessarily for Trump. It's not about that. We're focused on values here. We're focused on policy. And okay, Trump is our president, but there was no endorsement of Trump per se, and you never heard her come out and say that. So people are careful, and is that wrong? It's probably wrong too, to be careful. But if you're a politician, I understand.
Yeah, Debbie, it got so ugly with the campaign, particularly in our town, in our county, because our county, by and large, has been primarily Republican, and we have more people coming in from the city. So when we vote, if we were to vote presidents and we vote Republican, doesn't matter. This state, Illinois, is not a swing state. Illinois is a blue state. Doesn't matter. The only place that the electoral votes are always going to go to a Democrat. And we understand that. That's how it was in Massachusetts when we lived in Massachusetts. That's just how it was, and that's fine. But on the local level, it got kind of ugly because of the national election. So people started assuming, and this is where I really take offense, and I still take offense, that if you are Republican, which by the way is the party that was developed and organized to abolish slavery. But now, if you're a Republican, you are automatically deemed a racist. Now, where in the definition of Republican is racism in there? I really take offense to that, because I know a lot of Republican people. I am a registered Republican, and they're anything but. They try and do the best they can in life, and they try not to judge other people. And to have this woman, this person who was running for Congress, someone wrote the C word all over her signs on people's lawns, because people have lawn signs here in the States to endorse their candidate. And her signs would be up around town, and someone in the middle of the night just started writing the C word on him. I mean, how classless is that? Yes. How low is that? That's pathetic.
I suppose you'd probably get that everywhere. I suppose that's some loony in the area, who's just a bigot and who they're, but you can't control those people, I don't think, Kecia. I just. Oh, so what's next, guys? I mean, there was a very funny thing going around Facebook last night of Home Alone, the scene in Home Alone where Macaulay Culkin is like setting up his house to keep everybody out,
I didn't see that.
And Donald Trump is doing the very same thing. He's putting like ice on the steps and all that kind of stuff. So what happens? Do you think he'll back down when he sees the final results? Is that what you think is going to happen?
Yeah, this is what I think should happen. I don't know if it will happen, because he is unpredictable.
Well, can I just say before you say that, Kecia, Debbie, this is very much part of the process here.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't get too much heartburn over the fact that he isn't accepting the results. We've seen it before. We saw it 20 years ago with Al Gore, doing the same thing that Biden has done, essentially stepping up and saying he's the president-elect. Well, it was very close, and after it was taken to court and the votes were checked, the decision was reversed, and in fact he wasn't.
It was
George Bush.
It's the Florida thing, 20 years. Was it in Florida this all happened?
It was Florida.
It was the hanging chads. But that took, I want to say, 27 or 37 days. It was something, I think maybe 7 days.
It was 39 days.
Okay. So it was a while, and they didn't get the results right away. But you know what? Al Gore owed that to his voters. And that's why I don't think anyone's really, even Mitt Romney, who does not like who does not like Trump, said that this is a process that should happen. He owes it to the voters to make sure that all the votes are counted. Whether or not he is going to win, we need to know that. And we also need to know as Americans that our voting process is secure, it's safe, it's reliable, and credible. Because if there is a doubt about that, the next election is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, and the news you're seeing, Debbie, I don't doubt it for a moment, is saying that Trump has made these allegations and they're baseless and there's no evidence, right? Is that the news you're seeing?
Well, it depends, Ciaran, who you read and what you listen to. I mean, we see obviously the New York Times and all that stuff on Twitter every day and all that. I mean, we see newspaper articles as well as all the glossy newses, and then we see the English and the Irish newses. So we've a clatter of newses, really. I mean,
okay, good.
Now, Fox is definitely Fox. I thought it was hilarious the way Fox cut off her nibs the other night when she was talking, the blondie. That was
people are, you know what, Republicans are getting like diehard Republicans. And I'm also going to say, you had a guy on the other day from San Diego, a Irish guy.
Now, yes.
Yeah. Okay, he was great, and he had a really good point. The Republican Party is its party, but there's a section of that party that are definitely Trump supporters, and they're loyal, and they will have his back all the way to the end. And the point of it. Oh, so that's part of the issue that you're seeing on Fox News. They called Arizona very early. They're like, how could they do that? I mean, that was very premature. Even the major left networks did not call Arizona to Biden. So they took great offense to that. And Fox News is in trouble with the Republicans, especially the Trump supporters, because they are not in agreement of how Fox has been handling.
But it's like Rupert Murdoch has done a U-turn and decided to go in a different direction very quickly. Did you watch, as a matter of interest, just to change the subject, did you watch Succession?
Yes, we love it.
I mean, it's exactly the Murdoch family. You know that?
Yeah.
It's exactly the Murdoch family. I mean,
It's a really good series. We
Yeah.
love it.
But the control over the media is scary, I think, all over the world anyway, probably. I mean, I would like to think in Ireland we have people who are very honest and all that, but I think that the whole world has, I mean, social media has changed the way we look at news and we listen to news and how we absorb everything we hear all the time, you know?
And in fact, Debbie, we were saying that all of this divide, when we were in agreement that the media is responsible for much of the divide, for inciting, for misrepresenting and providing bad on all sides.
And censoring.
All sides, right? And creating this environment where it's okay to, where they represent it as journalism, and all it is canvassing of votes. And it's Fox News, it's CNN, it doesn't matter who you're talking about, it's canvassing, it's political, it's nothing more. Now, there are some good journalists on there, but they're barely journalists at best. We need media, we need responsible media again. Because we were in COVID, I spent so much time just flipping channel to channel, watching the same news, and I was stunned that the same news item could be shown
10 times. Oh,
so
10 different ways.
Completely differently, with a completely different narrative. And depending on what channel you're watching, the narrative is the same drumbeat, the same, and how insulting to the American population.
Well, no, the worst
to feel like you're spoon-fed.
Yeah.
But Ciaran, I work in Russia, as you well know, and I've been in Russia when stories have broken. And the story that I'm watching on Russian television, and when I come home, the story is a totally different story. So Russian people are seeing one version of the story, and when I come home, I'm seeing the Western version, and somewhere in the middle is the actual.
That's very true.
That's it.
That is so it. We are watching left and right.
People are saying to me, how can you work there if they're doing this, that, and the other? And I'm saying, hold on, they're actually not doing this, that, or the other. That's not, and yet the entire world is absorbing it in a certain way. So somebody at the top is designing how we're all supposed to be we're plugged into somebody's brain somewhere, It's very worrying. Actually, it's worrying for children as well, because they're all, even to be addicted to TikTok, Somebody said to me the other day, and I don't know how PC this is, but somebody said to me the other day that TikTok was designed by the Chinese, and so the Chinese government have access to it completely. And so people are completely addicted to it because it's so fabulous and it's so addictive. And then people in China are looking at fake news all day long on it, that the Chinese are feeding into it. So they're only getting these fabulous TikTok videos and fake news all day long. That's it. So, how can you make, intelligent decisions on anything when this is constantly pouring in on your head? You
have to work really hard at it. Mm-hmm. You have to dig. You have to hear. And let's face it, us as Irish, we know when someone's selling us BS, right? I think we all have that innate thing in us that goes, no, I know what that isn't and what it is. And no, thank you. And here there's this just assumption that you're going to accept what you're fed. And a lot of people do. They take the narrative, they don't question it, and they go on with it, which is the issue that people have with each other, depending on which narrative you adopt. Yes. So it comes down to, Debbie, to something that you talked about at the opening of the call, and my political leanings. I'm listening. I want to know your policies, and I will understand from, for work, what I do is talk to some of the largest corporations in America about what the economy is going to do, what the market is going to do, why it's going to do that. I have a good education from Trinity that helps me understand. So I use all of that. I listen. And then I have my leanings, but I look at it all together and I say, what's going to be good for the economy, for the American people? What's going to be good for me and my family? How are we going to, and the next generation? And that's when you come down to some of the kind of baseline, common sense values that don't exist and exist. And it's that kind of simple for me. Yeah. The left, the Dems are very extreme and pretty radical. Joe Biden is not. But Joe Biden, so when we looked at these, when we looked at these two candidates, are you kidding me? On both sides, really not ideal. So then it came down to policy, and Biden is president by committee. There's no question he is not the president. There's a group, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and others are all going to be there behind him. And he ran on the ticket and he owes them. And then you have, something that's kind of appealing about Trump to many people, somebody who just says it like it is, stupid as he will sound, he says it, and you're like, oh my God, but he also says he makes some sense sometimes. And people say, okay, in this craziness, this anti-establishment person who has just, has created such havoc through the political system because he doesn't follow paths. He's made incredible progress in a very short amount of time, and on a number of fronts that have been materially good for the economy and good for American people, right? But it's hard to see.
Is that good for all American people or people who have money?
All American people.
Yeah.
So for instance,
his base is pretty much working class.
So Debbie, here's
the
one
poor
example.
are as looked after, to use a terrible word, but so the poor have done as well as the wealthy under Trump, have they?
The poor have done better under Trump than any other president in the past 20 or 30 years. The poor have done. So here's an example I'm going to give you. He immediately, one of the first things that he did was draw up a tax plan, and it reduced the average tax savings for the average family was $6,100. So that was every family who was paying income tax. So immediate $6,100. So the Republicans are for smaller government, lower taxes, allow you to spend your money the way you choose to do it, versus the Democrats, which are about, you need bigger government because you need our help, and we'll do that for you. We'll look after you, but you're going to pay more in taxes, and we'll decide how that money is spent, right? And what we've seen is over and over again, candidates say, the Democrats come out and say, look, we're going to take care of you poor, especially the minority poor. And what we saw this election, more than any other election, Debbie, it was really interesting to see, was endorsement by minorities for Trump. Now, that's surprising because, the narrative is
he's racist.
He's
That's
racist.
the narrative.
Well, guess what? The minorities were like, no, your values are about what we connect with. And that's what we want. So we saw the Latinos.
Isn't he a very foolish person that he had that power and he completely fucked it up, for lack of a better word, because he lost so many votes with so many people for his obnoxious behavior all through.
Exactly.
That's it. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yep.
Like the chin stuck out in that big aggressive way, coming out of the COVID clinic, telling everybody, don't worry about it, it's fine, you'll plow through it. And meanwhile, he's had helicopters, the best doctors in the world, blah, blah, blah. Like he really did, he shot his own feet off again and again and again. So, and
in the first debate, he blew it too.
Yeah.
He doesn't listen to people, I think. Probably doesn't take counsel from anybody, I'm assuming.
He's extremely unconventional, and for some people, and again, I'm going to say this: the people are the Trump supporters. We have friends, very good friends of ours, adore him. They went to his inauguration, like they love him. So they are Trumpers. They want to go to rallies. They were part of the whole thing, and I'm not going to fault them for that. They see something in him that really speaks to them. I see the benefits that we have enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Having an economy booming, having our unemployment
the lowest
ever.
I mean, as a human being, presidents should be role models, I think. I mean, no matter who they are. Like,
100%.
We have a magnificent president in Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, and, initially we were all going, God, well, is he going to? Because he kind of got in nearly by default in the beginning. And, he's calm, magnificent. He speaks Irish beautifully. He looks after he's so welcoming in the park. He hits all the notes all of the time. He's classy, no corruption. And before that, we had Mary McAleese, who is just could run the world, the woman. She's off the scale. And before we had Mary Robinson. So we've just had stellar people that are actually all role models, completely role models of mine. Well, certainly McAleese and Mary Robinson would be two huge role models of mine. But I no matter how good he is at fixing as what you're saying there, those details, for me, a president has to be presidential.
Yeah.
The president has to be presidential. He doesn't.
That would certainly be ideal. And Debbie, the thing this time around for this election, at least for me, was the gross discrepancy in treatment of the candidates. President Trump got into office in 2000, when he got elected in 2016. The moment he got into office, they were trying to get him out. The moment they came up with the whole Russian collusion thing, they came up with any of the impeachment, anything they could to get him out. Okay, that is not accepting the results of the election, first and foremost. He was elected, he won, we have to move on. They were not moving on. They want him out. Second of all, this election, and he did the best he could. He had an uphill battle. He had no supporters, no friends, no special interest, all on his own. That's how it was on this election. He did not get it was kind of like Bernie Sanders in many ways, in that he got grassroots donations. He got people, just regular average Joes, donating to his campaign. Whereas Biden had big tech, Soros, just like gobs of very much earmarked money being sent to him for the campaign. That doesn't sit well with me, because now he owes them something. Now there's payback, and that I don't feel comfortable with, because Biden generally is a very moderate guy, and he's like McCain. He's a very moderate guy. He can work with both sides of the aisle there, to go back to the But he picked a very progressive running mate, and first and foremost, I am delighted that a woman, even though I don't agree with her policies whatsoever, but that a woman is now in the White House in some capacity. And I have a feeling she might actually end up being president. We'll see about that. Yes. But I think that has such progress. We needed that. We do need that. But the ticket was so flimsy, so weak. No one challenged him. They asked him what kind of ice cream was he eating? What kind of ice cream did he get the other people? Meanwhile, Trump, well, what are you doing about COVID? We have X amount of thousands of people dead. What are you doing? Like, they threw softball after softball instead of saying to Biden, what are you doing about COVID?
I do agree with all of that, Kecia. I do agree with you there. However, I did think, and I said this to Jonathan the other night, I was expecting Biden, like when I knew he was coming on to do his speech, when they had called it, I kind of thought, I'm going to bed, because I know he's just kind of a soft old granddad. I didn't need to hear. But actually, I sat up, and I was actually surprisingly impressed, because I think we all felt, oh my God, somebody is finally pouring positive words, healing words, because we've been so short of that. Like, we all used to look to America as the kind of big, great, shiny, fabulous place. We haven't been doing that. It's lost that completely in Europe.
The ugly, dirty underbelly is showing right now.
Yes, and I just kind of think that Biden's words were, maybe an extension of Barack's, and he was borrowing pieces of different, it's one country and all this. It's, we're all one people. It's America. We're not red or blue. And I think that we all needed to hear that, because everybody was exhausted with the negative rhetoric.
Right.
But here's AOC tweeting, we need to have an accountability record of anyone who endorsed, gave money to, supported Trump, and then actually threw in something, your futures might be impacted into some shit. I'm paraphrasing. I'm absolutely paraphrasing. That is not verbatim, but that's kind of where it was. Yeah. Now there are people that are on Facebook, people that I am friendly with, that are posting stuff saying, if you supported Trump, then you have no humanity, you're a racist, you're a horrible person, and we cannot be friends. So I find that just like so shallow-minded. That's not reality. Nor do I think that people who voted for Biden and Kamala are socialists and anarchists either. I mean, this is where it is kind of right now. We're divided.
Yeah.
Biden has his work.
He has caused that, he didn't, I don't remember at any point hearing the same healing words, we're one country, we're one color, where he was dividing, he was divisive, he was stirring the shit all of the time, just from what we could see. So he has caused a lot of this fury, anger, aggression. I think I don't mean he's endorsed it kind of, but I do we feel over this side, I suppose, that he has stirred all of that up. Now, whether maybe it needs to be stirred up, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But it's so interesting to see now what's going to happen. Kamala obviously is highly, highly educated. She's a governor. She's a woman, which is fabulous. And she seems to be as cool as a cucumber. She seems to take it in her stride. But you know, it's great to see that people should be able to sit down and talk about it without you know. I mean, Ciaran, we were raised in a country where people were killing each other over two different sides.
Right.
Right.
So in Ireland, we well know what it's like to have people, and it took billions of pounds coming in through the Ireland Fund program projects to try and get like Catholic children to walk down the street with Protestant children, to go and have to go to a puppet theatre together on a Saturday so they could sit in the same room. Like we've been doing that, like the Ireland Fund actually have been doing that for years and years and years, funding these. Americans have been giving money into the pot and for this purpose of kind of bringing together the two sides, and so that people can walk down the street, because the hatred was at some point so high, you know. So it takes years and years for this to go away, and for intelligent people to calmly not use that really terrible rhetoric that he should have known better than to use it in a lot of cases, like sack him, lock him up, all that. Ciaran, you know, it's just not acceptable for a president to be saying lock her up. It's just not acceptable, you know. The presidents have to be presidential. There has to be, you know, if they're going for an interview in front of a panel of 10 people, surely there's things you look for, you know.
Yeah, but so to that point, Debbie, I completely agree that disqualifies candidates for president, right? But when you look at the alternative, and the alternative is talking about defunding the police, okay, that's a baseline requirement of society, is the police. I don't want to reimagine the police, get rid of the police, and let's reimagine. What are we talking about here? Police. Look, let's be practical, people. We've got bills to pay. We've got families to raise. We want security, basic stuff here. And the alternative there is, that's in question.
Well, Ciaran,
that's an extreme example.
That's an extreme example, and I have a lovely friend in Mobile who was on this week, Michelle, and she's just fabulous. And we were having these conversations over the last few days because she was very anti-Trump, and for many different reasons. But we were talking about this defund, and I am a total armchair, complete armchair person. And she was saying that they didn't defund because you had that conversation with me the other night, Ciaran, by text. She was saying that it has been twisted to use that word, that instead of defund it, and I'm giving you this now in the kind of the blonde version is what you're getting now, but like she was saying that they didn't just defund the police. Her point was that they took money from the police and put it, say, towards social workers or towards people who were able to intervene, say, that instead of police going in to handle every situation, which they cannot do, they were sending in social workers, they were sending in, you know, guardians, they were sending in maybe, I don't know, guardian ad litems, whatever it was. And that instead of defunding the police, which you're using that phrase, the funding was actually taken from the police where they weren't appropriate and going in the direction of people who were more appropriate to deal with a situation. That was her point about that. And she thought the defunding of the police phrase was completely...
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because defunding the police is a very provocative term, right? Essentially, it materially meant that, I mean, reimagine is another term that's being used. Reimagine the police. That's a much softer, nicer way of saying it. But in the meantime, there's no police. So we still had a situation in Minneapolis this summer where the city was on fire, essentially, falling apart. And they decided, whatever group of politicians decided, we're going to reimagine the police. We're going to change this model. Did. And within 6 weeks, the crime rate was through the roof. And the same people who asked for and effected the change to defund or, you know, to divert resources from police came back out in public and said, we need police, and in fact, we need more police. So there's it's a pretty extreme. For me, it's the black and white. It's the extreme version of, okay, that doesn't make sense to me. And if you're for any version of that, no, this is way too radical.
I like the concept of, the reimagining is basically reallocating, and I get that, and I think that's a good idea. I think it needs to be seamless though. Like you need to have that infrastructure in place already with the social workers, with the healthcare for mental health care, for those calls that really don't need a police officer, but maybe just need someone who can connect with someone mentally to get off the cliff. Once that infrastructure is in place, then maybe you can reallocate or reimagine. But right now, I mean, oh my gosh, like our cities, Chicago, crazy,
terrible,
awful,
our beautiful city in ruins, Debbie.
And then just people just
and I went
liberties,
downtown 3 weeks
breaking
ago,
the windows and looting,
and it was just a disgrace to see our beautiful city all boarded up, all broken glass everywhere, looted.
And you need to come home and live in Ireland.
Well, that's why I think when I texted you and I said we're moving.
So I told you, I told Jonathan he could all be upstairs, because I told Jonathan Bell he could come and stay upstairs as well. So there'll be a whole load of you upstairs in the attic.
I told Kecia we needed a family plan if things go south.
Oh yeah,
get out of here.
Seriously.
And Ireland was the plan.
Listen, I have a shed. I have a shed.
We're kidding.
I have the shed. So I can't go on all night because we can't post these things if they go on forever, and I think we're probably already way over the time. But anyway, listen, it's great to hear from the two of you. I hope your kids have come through all of this unscathed, because they're the next generation that have to face into
the worst part about this is, and just in a nutshell, is that 2020 has been one big test, a test of friendships, a test of our government, a test of stamina, mental ability. Right now, we're testing Colin, our youngest, because he needs to get into college, and he's remote right now, and it's just so hard to motivate him.
Yes, and is he thinking about going to Trinity? He's thinking about going to Trinity.
Yes, he's applying. Hang on one second.
He's applying.
Yeah. Trinity is his number 2 choice.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Fabulous. God, Ciaran, it would be amazing for him to go to Trinity after being raised in the States, really, when you were there.
You're a grandmother since I saw you last.
I'm a granny. We have the most magnificent. Yes, he's magnificent. And with all the darkness and all the COVID and all the drama, he's just the joy. He just comes in and lights up the whole house with joy and love, and it's the next phase, and it is magnificent. And also the family all got together then over the last few days, and they started up a little company. You have to look it up. It's beachandwalnut.com. Beach and Walnut. Yeah, look it up. It's gorgeous, and it's all beautiful Irish timber from like Wicklow Forests, and they're making these boards and cheese boards and chopping boards. And Sophie was helping Mick with it, and Mikey was in on it, and so we've had that going on. But we're kind of crafty lot in this house anyway. So that was a lovely.
Been making some great things.
Yeah, we're a crafty kind of bunch, but I mean, we are a crafty bunch.
A great thing to do during lockdown.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like we were we all had time to breathe and see what, it gave our hands time to work, and whereas before that we were all on the run, traveling, fundraising, events. You didn't have time to sit down for an hour. You felt guilty if you sat down for an hour. Whereas now we're kind of forced to do it. So it's a good thing because it's made so many people have started new companies in Ireland. So many people have started new businesses. It's just amazing to see what's come out. The cloud has a silver lining, So listen, guys, I'm going to end on that because we could go on all night. We could actually go on all night. It's great to see the two of you.
Say hi to Mick and the family and your mom and dad for me.
Okay, you too. And listen, I'll see your dad. Try to see your dad in Nolan's, Ciaran. And all of those bloody problems over there, will you guys? Because they're not,
We'll sort them out.
Get it sorted. Get it sorted.
See you, Debbie.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.